going on, everybody? It's your boy, the Storyteller, and I don't know exactly how I'm gonna do this video. I know there's gonna be Mountain Blade in the background, and yes, the sound is lowered. Finally, I figured out how to do that properly. But recently, it's been a lot of military stories, and I still have a few that I can tell. But honest and truthfully, with it being, a new year and everyone's, improving themselves, whether it be physically, mentally, or, emotionally, however you choose to improve yourself this year. I wanted to talk about stuff on a little bit more of a serious note because I feel like it's stuff that doesn't get talked about enough, these days with everything going on. Obviously, we have, you know, we still have Russia, Ukraine, we have China, Taiwan, we have the southern border, we have, all kinds of stuff going on in the nation. And I don't want to talk about any of that stuff specifically because I know that stuff can get really, twitchy. I just wanted to, bring up the fact that I'm not blind to it. I understand all that stuff is going on. I understand guys aren't talking to females, females aren't talking to guys. I understand there's a bunch of shit going on with, what is it, fucking Israel, I understand there's a bunch of shit about who's a male and who's a female. There's all kinds of shit going on that I could talk about. But I'm not going to, because as much as I want to talk about serious stuff, I'm not going to bring that here. Because that's just, a time bomb waiting for someone to fucking click the button. But let's talk about some stuff that I'm sure you guys remember, but no one really talks about it no more. Like, this could just be me. Maybe I'm thinking too far outside the box. Maybe I'm gonna bring this shit up and somebody's gonna jump through this window right here. Fucking. But, yeah, let's talk about some shit that's, important, but no one's talking about it. Even though this is, a global thing. This isn't just shit that's unique to us, living in a postmodern world. This is a global issue that no one fucking, discusses no more. Seriously? Let's start out with just putting your brain where I want your brain to be for this video. Y'all remember back in elementary, if you were born anywhere between, I want to say 1995 to maybe 2000 and 2005, that 10-year window. If you were born in there and you were in elementary school or middle school, hell, even high school probably. Y'all remember the food pyramid? Maybe you don't remember the pyramid, whether it be, the bottom was grain or this, that, and the third, or maybe you remember the regular triangle fucking shit, or maybe you remember the pie chart where it was up in here was whole grains, and then down in here was proteins, up in here was fat and carbs or whatever, and then off to the side you had a fucking thing for dairy. It was supposed to be in a cup. Y'all remember that shit? We just gonna completely discuss how they just silently got rid of that shit. That shit was the pinnacle of what you need to be focusing on when you go to school and when you try to eat. Gone. Ain't nobody spoke about that shit. Just gone. Regardless, that's not what I want to talk about. That's a conspiracy theory for another day. On a more serious note, actually, now that your brain is back in that time period, here's what I really want you to think about. Y'all remember when we were in science and they was talking about the ozone layer? The ozone layer. I bet you ain't heard that term in such a long fucking time. When was the last time you heard a politician talk about the ozone layer? Last I remember.
Hey, post-production, Chris here. While I was rambling during this video, just trying to get a VO thing done, trying to bring up issues that I feel like haven't been discussed in years, and I don't know why they haven't been discussed. I was gonna do my research when I was actually, looking up images and facts and other things that I can display in the background while I'm talking about it. What I didn't know is that apparently there was a whole, I guess, summit or meeting between, the world people to stop using chemicals that destroy the ozone layer so much back in like mid to 2010s, which would make sense why I never heard about the ozone layer recovering, because when I was learning about the ozone layer and how it was depleting, it was when I was in sixth grade, and I was born in 2002. So if I started, kindergarten at 5 or 6 like everybody else, I was probably in sixth grade at like what, 2011, 2012. So it makes sense why I hadn't heard, that they fixed this issue. But yeah, so post production Chris, realizes that past Chris was not exactly the smartest. But it's okay, because I feel like at the end of the day, there are probably a lot of people who didn't know that this was a thing that got fixed, because I don't remember anyone ever fucking talking about it.
Obviously, speaking on the ozone layer, we're gonna get back to global warming. I think just about everybody can conclude that the weather when we were young is not the same as the weather we have now. I remember from like after Halloween, even like some parts of like Thanksgiving here in Michigan, it'd be snow on the ground. And it wouldn't be like a light snow sometimes. It'd be a thick layer of snow and some ice. Then we get to actual like December, January, February. Oh, just a mess. Terrible snow up to you halfway past your shins. Fucking ice on the roads, even though the salt trucks went by like 5 times today. You getting canceled out of school because of how much snow and ice it is. When's the last time y'all got what northern states that get ice and snow and all that shit regularly around this time of year? When was the last time y'all got called out for snow? Like, be honest. Like, because we used to get called out for snow for like a whole week, depending on how the snow was falling. That shit don't happen no more, because it doesn't snow anymore, because the planet's warmer now. All these fucking greenhouse gases and cars and emissions and what is it? There was a city. I think it's in California. I think it's LA, where like there are certain times of the year where like it's just a haze. It's just a fog of fucking carbon dioxide from all the nasty shit getting pumped into the fucking air. Like, and no one really talks about that. Like, yeah, we have the forest fires, and we talk about that, because that fire is scary. But we don't talk about that. And that's gonna roll me right into the next point, pollution. Whether it be shit in our oceans, shit in the land, toxic fucking pollution, like, we haven't slowed down on that as far as I'm aware. It's probably gotten worse. Like, okay, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I don't know how many of y'all did this back in middle school or high school. Y'all remember when they were talking about, natural resources like coal and oil, and how those resources can't be, like once they run out, they're gone. We're never getting them back ever again. We can try and make our own synthetic shit, but it's never going to be as good as the natural shit, right? And, the obvious statement that was next to that was, the more the population increases, the more we're going to use these natural resources, and the faster they're going to go out. I don't know who else was an asshole back in the day. But I was one of the people that was like, well, if natural resources are, going out because the population is too high, sounds like if there was a purge in the population, there wouldn't be such a need for these finite natural resources. And now that's gonna roll me into the thing that I've been hearing about lately. The thing I've been hearing about lately is that, we're not having enough children these days. Like, I know Japan has had their thing for like 10, 20 years, and to that extreme, I think it's bad. Because now you have, let's just say, for example, the youngest person is like 30. By the time he turns 50, the next person is going to be like 15 or 20. So there's this giant gray area where there's just going to be no population. And I think that's bad. But to sit and say that us slowing down the rapid production of kids is necessarily a bad thing, I think that's nature course correcting, if I'm being brutally honest with you. Like, let's think about this. For years on years on years, we were told that, bigger population equals bigger problems. We gotta make more shit, we gotta sell more shit, there's more people buying shit that you want. Well, if we lower the population, let's say 1 billion, just like on some Thanos shit, just indiscriminately from across all the countries on the planet, just subtract 1 billion cumulatively from the planet. The amount of shit that we wouldn't be making and spending and this, that, and the third, that's not a terrible thing. When you're talking about, resources and, emissions and carbon footprints and medical and shit like that, it's not a bad thing to not have to deal with the individual. Because that's a global thing that just got, healed there. But again, maybe that's just the asshole in me. That's maybe me trying to play devil's advocate and say that maybe a slight dip in the population isn't the worst thing ever. Again, that's just me. And that's going back to, resources and, carbon footprints and shit. That's how we're going to lower, the last 3 things that I just talked about. The ozone layer ripping open, global warming, and pollution. There's not going to be as many people causing those things to rise. Again, that's just me. I already briefly talked about it. Again, I don't want to go into detail on it. Politics. All I'm going to say is this when it comes to politics and policies. If someone asks you why you voted for this person, or why you like or dislike one person, if one of your opening remarks has to do with their race or gender, you probably need to reinspect what you're looking at. Like, for example, let's go back a few presidents. Let's say Ronald Reagan. Why do you like or dislike Ronald Reagan? Oh, well, I like his policies on economics. I think they're going to be great for the business class of America. That's a fine answer. Why do you like or dislike Ronald Reagan? Well, I think he's a true-blooded white American. Why do you have to throw that in there? Why is his race relevant? Why? Why is that relevant? It's not. That's the point I'm trying to make. Is it's not. You could have a fucking Native American up on a panel. You could have a fucking Mexican up on the panel. You could have a Canadian on the panel. You could have a British person on the panel. You could have someone who's white, black, yellow, orange, fucking has stripes like a zebra. If they all have the exact same fucking policy, all the other shit that I just mentioned doesn't matter. because the policy is the same. At this point, you're picking off of, you know, something that's visual. It's not anything that's, you know, below the surface. You're looking at surface level shit. That's just my opinion on it. That's all I'm gonna say on it. Just make sure you're looking at more than the surface whenever you're talking about politics. That's my fucking thing. That's all I'm gonna get to with that. Absolutes on the internet. This has bugged me for the longest fucking time. I don't think anyone on the internet knows what the word nuance means. Like, you can't ask a yes or no question when it's a question that has a complex answer. Like, probably the best thing that I can give to as an example, like, would you, I don't even know how to fucking, there's all kinds of shit though you see on the internet. Like, if someone says something about, you know, 1940 and all the shit that was going on during that time. For anyone who doesn't know history, 1940 was World War II. Okay, now we're on the same page. Okay. If you make a statement about something that happened back then, you're either blank or blank. There's no middle. There's no middle in it. Like, for example, I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. In fact, my religious belief, I don't know if there's even a word for it. I've never heard anyone discuss it in this way. And I'm not saying that just to be unique and weird, but like, okay, so, and here's the premise for this, is like, once upon a time, my Nana, my grandma, she was very religious. She was Christian. I don't know what sect and all that other fancy shit. First and foremost, if you're a religion under a God and the word of God is what you follow, why the fuck are there so many different sections and like, what? That's confusing just on its own. But regardless, my whole thing is like, I asked her, if there is one God and there is only one true God, then explain different religions with different names for said God. She said God has many different names and faces. I was like, Eventually that got me thinking some years later, and I thought about, what if, you know, every, like, Pangea, the whole, like, one continent planet before, you know, the continental drift and shit. What if, like, back then, you know, all these different people were in one spot. Asians, Indians, da-da-da-da-da. And someone brought up God. But when they split, and, you know, word of mouth, how words get tangled and, you know, stories get mixed up, maybe the Indians took their turned God into Hinduism and Buddhism. Maybe the, you know, Europeans turned God into Christianity. Maybe, you know, Middle Easterns turned God into Islam. What I'm saying is, I think there is only one true thing. However, it's been spread out and, like, discerned, like, over time. Like, maybe there was one truth, but over time, you know, one truth turned into two truths, and then two truths turned into four truths, because I forget the name of the paradox, where, like, word of mouth makes the story different every single time someone tells the story. Because someone's going to hear it one way, and someone's going to say it another way. So I think it's a very interesting theory when it comes to, you know, religion. I think it's a different take that, you know, everybody comes from the same religion from, like, ancient times. But today, it's separate because it's been, you know, word vomited over the years, and, you know, it's been written by different people at different times, and all kinds of shit. And that's also why so many things I think are similar. Like, Christians, think that the human body is full of sin, and we have to, turn away that sin in order to, be closer to God. Well, when you think about it, that sounds kind of like I don't know if it's Buddhist or Hinduist thing where, like, they forsake all of their worldly values and, attain, like, enlightenment. That just sounds like a more, I guess, radicalized version of that. Because I think what a lot of people say is like that religion is like super like individualistic. Well, maybe that's the part of the original story that they focused in on instead of what Christians focused in on or Jewish people focused in on. Regardless, and that's where I think like nuance is important on the internet, because if I were to say these words to like a devoted Christian's face, he'd probably start sprinkling fucking holy water on me. But that's just like an example of like absolutes on the internet and how I don't think, they work the way we would want them to work. Like there has to be room for a deeper answer, a chance to like articulate and think, because we're born and we learned throughout time to critically think and one, develop your own thoughts, but also just be able to communicate your thoughts for other people to understand, because that's important too. So yeah, final thing: adults. If you are an adult and you are in charge of minors, no, let me, how do I want to phrase this? If you are an adult and you have the next generation under your stewardship, there's 3 things I need you to remember. 1, we started at different starting lines. Back in the day, cashiering, you didn't have, different buttons. You probably had the same amount of buttons, but like you didn't have like screens that like could, fail. Maybe you tapped here and it picked you up way up here. You didn't have like all kinds of different layers of technology that makes things both simpler but also sometimes more complicated. So just have a little bit of sympathy and grace for the fact that times are different and the way that we do things are different. Secondly, if you had someone who mentored you and they did something that pissed you off, do not be the adult that says, "Oh, well, I had it this way, so you're gonna have it this way too." You're perpetuating generational trauma. It's a thing. You don't want to fucking admit it because trauma wasn't a thing back when you were fucking growing up. It's a thing now. Everyone acknowledges it. There's fucking therapy for it now these days. Fucking don't perpetuate the bullshit that you didn't like. You're just being an asshole by passing it off to the next person. Be better. I feel like that's a phrase that not a lot of people hear these days. Be better. You can be better. Be better. And then finally, what did I say? I said fucking, different generation. Remember that we as the younger generation, because I'm only 23, we as the younger generation are a direct result of the effort and energy and knowledge you pumped in. I don't know how often like certain things are talked about, but like there was a comedy skit a while back that I saw that it was like, youngsters these days don't know how to read a map. Okay, Susan, when did you teach us how to read a map? Us not knowing how to read a map says less about us as students and more about you as a teacher. Kids these days don't know how to change a tire. When did you show us how to change a tire? Like, in all seriousness, like, We can, guess to, undo the bolts one at a time. That's simple enough. We can guess that obviously to move the tire off, we gotta take weight off the tire. How we're gonna lift it up, and that's a little bit more, an angle. But putting it back on, line up those studs with the holes, simple enough. The star method is where you're probably getting caught up at. That's why the tire's still fucking wobbly even after you tightened up everything. But again, when did you teach us? If we're struggling with something, remember, we only know what we were taught. Sometimes, even if like we were supposed to go out and discover shit, a lot of times there was some random jackass who showed us something. Like, I guarantee you, if, your dad was like, go change your tire, you went out and changed the tire, he still came out and checked it. And he would tell you whether it was right or wrong. You told us to go change the tire, and then never went and checked it, and then was confused why you're getting a phone call from a tow company. Like, as an adult, you have to assume some level of responsibility whenever you're talking about kids and they're failing as kids. Because you're the person who's supposed to be teaching them. These are some serious things that I feel like don't get talked about enough because we're so worried about other shit that at the end of the day, if you mind your own fucking business, nobody cares. Like, we really don't. It's when you make it a personal thing that you push on to others, or you make it a global thing where it impacts whole societies and rules and laws, that it becomes a problem that people need to address. But if you keep that shit one-on-one, nobody's gonna care. And nobody needs to care. But you want them to. And that's on you. Be better. I don't like to talk about serious shit. Y'all know I like to keep it light on here, but I'm running out of military stories, so I gotta turn it to something else eventually. Hope you all enjoyed. Hopefully there's not too many more videos like this, but hey, I post every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, potentially some Saturdays. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe down below. Bye bye.